December 14th, 1944. The Hürtgen Forest, Germany. 0547 hours. The temperature hovers just above freezing, and a pale fog clings to the shattered pines like a funeral shroud. Private First Class Danny Reeves crouches in a muddy foxhole, his breath forming ghostly clouds in the pre-dawn darkness. Around him, the remnants of Baker Company, 2nd Battalion, 22nd Infantry Regiment, are scattered in a ragged defensive line. They've been pinned down for 16 hours. 3 German snipers, concealed somewhere in the dense forest ahead, have turned this sector into a killing ground. Every attempt to advance has ended in blood. Every head that rises above the trench line invites a crack of Mauser fire and another body slumping into the frozen earth. Reeves watches as Corporal Henderson, a kid from Ohio who'd been talking about his girl back home just yesterday, makes the mistake of shifting his position too quickly. The rifle shot echoes through the trees. Henderson drops without a sound. That makes 7 men dead since dawn. 7 friends. 7 soldiers who trusted the doctrine, followed the orders, and died because nobody could figure out how to silence 3 hidden riflemen. Danny Reeves is 23 years old, but his hands tell a different story. They're scarred and calloused from years working the coal mines of West Virginia. Hands that learned early how to handle explosives in tight spaces, how to calculate fuse timing by instinct, how to move with precision when one mistake could bury you alive. His father had been a shot firer in the mines, the man responsible for setting charges to break up coal seams. Danny grew up watching his old man measure powder, crimp fuses, and place charges with the kind of calm focus most people reserve for Sunday prayers. By 15, Danny was doing the same work. By 17, he could set a charge in the dark by touch alone and bring down exactly the section of rock his crew needed without collapsing the tunnel. When the draft notice came in 1943, the Army saw his experience and sent him straight to combat engineer training. They taught him about field fortifications, bridge demolition, minefield clearance. But they didn't teach him creativity. They didn't teach him to think like a coal miner in a war zone. That was something he'd brought with him from the mountains of Appalachia. The doctrine is clear. When facing entrenched snipers, you call for artillery support. You wait for the big guns to flatten the area. Then you move in with infantry to mop up. It's systematic. It's safe for the officers planning it from 3 miles back. But Baker Company doesn't have artillery support right now. The guns are busy supporting the main push toward the Ruhr River. The radios are jammed with priority traffic. And every hour they wait, the German snipers adjust, relocate, and kill another man. The company commander, Captain Lawson, is a West Point graduate who believes in following procedure. He's ordered the men to hold position and wait for support. Nobody questions him out loud. Questioning orders gets you court-martialed. But Danny Reeves isn't thinking about court-martials. He's thinking about Henderson's body cooling in the mud. He's thinking about the way Private First Class Miller had screamed for his mother after taking a round to the lung 2 hours ago. He's thinking about the 3 riflemen out there, probably drinking ersatz coffee right now, congratulating each other on another successful day of hunting Americans. Reeves shifts in his foxhole and reaches into his pack. Buried under his rations and extra socks are 4 objects that, officially, he shouldn't have. They're German Schützenmine 42 anti-personnel mines, commonly called shoe mines by Allied troops because they're designed to blow off a soldier's foot. He'd pulled them from a captured supply dump 3 days ago during a sweep of an abandoned German position. Standard procedure would have been to turn them over to the ordnance disposal teams. Instead, Reeves had wrapped them in canvas and hidden them away, not because he wanted to collect enemy souvenirs, but because he recognized something the manual writers hadn't considered. These mines were small, compact, and packed with just enough explosive to be devastating at close range. They weren't meant to be thrown. But Danny Reeves had spent his teenage years throwing dynamite sticks into coal seams from precarious wooden platforms, calculating arc and distance while standing on planks that creaked under his weight. He knew explosives, and he knew that with the right modifications, these mines could become something entirely different. The problem with the Schützenmine 42, from a throwing perspective, is the fuse. It's pressure-activated, designed to detonate when someone steps on it. Useless for what Reeves has in mind. But during his combat engineer training, He'd learned about improvised fusing techniques. He'd learned that if you bypass the pressure plate and wire a short fuse blasting cap directly into the explosive charge, you can convert a static mine into a timed device. The instructors had mentioned this in the context of demolition work, not combat applications. They certainly never suggested anyone should try to throw the modified mine like a grenade. That would be insane. That would be unauthorized. That would violate every safety protocol in the field manual, which is exactly why Danny Reeves is going to do it tonight. He waits until full darkness. Captain Lawson has grudgingly agreed to wait one more night for artillery support, which means one more night of German snipers adjusting their positions, setting up for tomorrow's hunt. The men of Baker Company are exhausted, demoralized, and angry. Reeves can hear whispered conversations in the foxholes around him. Some want to retreat. Some want to charge blindly forward and hope for the best. Nobody has a good answer. Reeves says nothing. He's busy working in the darkness of his foxhole, using a small hooded flashlight and a set of wire cutters he borrowed from the company's communications section. He carefully disassembles the first Schutzamine, exposing the explosive charge. Then he takes a blasting cap from his engineer kit, the kind with 5-second fuse, and wires it directly to the mine's charge. He wraps the whole assembly in friction tape to keep it together during flight. The result looks crude, dangerous, and completely unofficial. It's also exactly what he needs. By 0200 hours, he has 4 modified mines ready. Each one is roughly the size and weight of a cantaloupe. Each one will detonate 5 seconds after he pulls the fuse igniter. Each one carries enough explosive force to kill anything within a 15-foot radius. He's calculated the throwing distance based on his mining experience. In the coal tunnels back home, he'd routinely thrown dynamite charges 30 to 40 feet to reach inaccessible seams. These mines are heavier, but the principle is the same. Arc, rotation, follow through. It's all about muscle memory and trust in your own hands. Reeves takes a long breath and checks his gear one final time. He's wearing his darkest uniform jacket. His face is smeared with mud for camouflage. He's left his rifle behind because it'll only slow him down. Instead, he's carrying a trench knife, his modified mines, and a compass. He's about to do something that could get him killed by the enemy, court-martialed by his own command, or both. He slips out of his foxhole at 0215 hours. The forest is pitch black, the fog still heavy. Good. He needs a darkness. Needs the enemy to be half asleep, confident that no American will be stupid enough to move at night in sniper-controlled territory. Reeves crawls forward on his belly, moving with the slow, deliberate patience his father taught him the mines. Fast movements get you killed. Panic gets you buried. You move like water, smooth and inevitable. He covers 50 feet in 20 minutes, pausing every few seconds to listen. The German snipers are out there somewhere. He'd spent the daylight hours watching muzzle flashes, triangulating positions. The first sniper is dug in near a cluster of fallen logs, roughly 200 yards northeast of the American line. The second is higher up, in the remnants of a stone hunting blind. The third is the smartest, constantly relocating, but Reeves thinks he's somewhere near a burned-out farmhouse foundation. 3 targets. For mines, 1 chance to get this right. The first sniper position is the easiest to reach. Reeves crawls for another 30 minutes, navigating by compass and memory, until he's within 30 feet of the fallen logs. He can hear something now. A faint cough. The rustle of fabric. Someone's awake. Good. That means they're not expecting company. Reeves reaches into his pack and pulls out the first modified mine. His hands are steady. Years of handling explosives in the dark have trained his fingers to work by touch alone. He finds a fuse igniter, a small pull ring similar to a grenade. He wraps his fingers around the mine, feeling its weight, calculating the arc in his mind. 30 feet. Slight upward trajectory to clear the logs. Let it tumble in flight for stability, just like throwing a stick of dynamite into a coal seam. Except this time, if he misses, the explosion will give away his position, and the other 2 snipers will converge on him in seconds. No pressure. He pulls the igniter. The fuse starts burning with a faint hiss. 5 seconds. Reeves rises to a crouch, winds up, and throws with every ounce of strength and precision he possesses. The mine tumbles through the darkness in a perfect barrel roll arc, spinning end over end. It clears the logs, lands somewhere in the space beyond. For a split second, Reeves wonders if he's miscalculated, if the mine will detonate too far away, if this entire insane plan is about to fail. Then the world turns white. The explosion is a brutal, flat crack that shakes the frozen ground and sends a shower of dirt and with splinters into the air. Reeves throws himself flat, pressing his face into the mud. Shrapnel hisses overhead. Something heavy crashes down nearby. Then silence. Not complete silence. Somewhere in the wreckage of the log pile, someone is screaming in German, but the screaming fades quickly. Reeves doesn't move. He's counting in his head. 30 seconds. 60. The other two snipers will have heard the explosion. They'll be awake now, alert, trying to figure out what just happened. Are they relocating? Are they calling for reinforcements? Reeves has no way to know. He only knows he has 2 more targets and 3 more mines. He starts crawling again, angling west toward the stone hunting blind. This position is more exposed. The sniper here has a clear view of the American lines and decent cover from counterfire. Getting close will be harder. But Reeves has an advantage the sniper doesn't expect. He's moving in the dark, in terrain the Germans think is secure. He's not following any doctrine. He's not doing anything a rational soldier would do, which means he's invisible right up until the moment he isn't. It takes him 45 minutes to cover the distance. Twice he freezes as he hears movement nearby. German voices, low and tense. They're spooked by the first explosion. They don't know what caused it. Reeves catches fragments of conversation. Something about American artillery. Something about a direct hit. They don't realize it was a hand-thrown mine. They can't imagine someone would be insane enough to crawl into their kill zone and start lobbing improvised explosives, like a coal miner tossing dynamite. That ignorance is going to cost them. He reaches a position 25 feet from the hunting blind. This one is trickier. The blind is built into a small rise, with stone walls that will deflect a poorly thrown mine. Reeves needs to arc the throw high, drop it almost straight down into the interior space. It's a shot he's made 1,000 times in the mines, dropping charges into vertical shafts. But those shafts didn't have armed enemy soldiers at the bottom. He pulls the second mine from his pack, checks the fuse, assembly one more time. Everything feels right. The weight, the balance. He rises to a crouch, pulls the igniter, and throws in a high, looping arc. The mine tumbles upward, reaches its apex, and drops in the blind like a stone falling into a well. Reeves is already diving for cover when the explosion tears through the night. This one is louder, more confined. The stone walls channel the blast upward and outward. Reeves feels a shockwave roll over him, hears debris clattering down around his position. Then, again, silence. No screaming this time. The second sniper is gone. 2 down. 1 to go. But now Reeves has a problem. The Germans know something is wrong. He can hear shouting in the distance, the sound of soldiers moving through the forest. They're trying to organize a response. And the third sniper, the smart one, the one who keeps relocating, has just been given a clear warning that someone is hunting his comrades. Reeves knows the next approach will be the most dangerous. The third sniper won't be sitting still. He'll be moving, watching, ready to fire at anything that moves. Reeves has 2 mines left. He needs to make one of them count. He starts crawling toward the burned-out farmhouse foundation, moving even slower now, pausing every few feet to listen. The forest is no longer quiet. German voices echo through the trees. He hears orders being barked, the sound of boots on frozen ground. A patrol is sweeping the area. Reeves presses himself into a shallow depression, barely breathing, as 3 German soldiers pass within 10 feet of his position. They're nervous, talking in quick, clipped sentences. None of them look down. They're watching the tree line, expecting American patrol, not a lone engineer lying in the mud with a pack full of modified explosives. The patrol moves on. Reeves waits 5 full minutes, then continues his crawl. He's been out here for nearly 3 hours now. The sky to the east is starting to lighten. Dawn is coming. If he doesn't finish this soon, he'll be exposed in daylight, and every German in this sector will be hunting him. He pushes the thought aside and focuses on the farmhouse foundation. It's a jumble of broken stone and charred timber, perfect cover for a sniper. But where exactly is the shooter positioned? Reeves lies motionless, scanning the ruins. Then he sees it. A faint shape, darker than the surrounding shadows. Someone is crouched behind a section of collapsed wall, rifle barrel just visible. The third sniper. And he's looking the wrong direction, watching the American lines, waiting for movement. He doesn't know death is lying 30 feet behind him. Reeves slowly, carefully, pulls the third mine from his pack. This is the longest throw he's attempted tonight. 30 feet, over uneven ground, with enough precision to land the mine inside the small space where the sniper is hiding. Missed by even a few feet, and the stone walls will shield the target. Worse, the explosion will reveal Reeves' position, and the German patrol he heard earlier will be on him in seconds. He has one shot, one chance. He thinks about Henderson, about Miller, about the 7 men who died, because nobody could figure out how to stop 3 hidden riflemen. He thinks about his father, standing in a cold tunnel with a stick of dynamite in his hand, saying, "Measure twice, throw once, and trust your hands, boy." Reeves pulls the igniter, hears the fuse start to burn, rises to a crouch, and throws with everything he has. The mine spins to the pre-dawn darkness in a perfect barrel roll, tumbling end over end. It arcs over the broken wall, drops into the space beyond. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then the explosion rips to the farmhouse foundation with a violence that sends chunks of stone flying in every direction. Reeves is already running, sprinting back toward the American lines, because he knows what's coming next. The German patrol heard that blast. They're converging on his position. He crashes through the underbrush, no longer caring about stealth, just focused on speed and distance. Behind him, he hears shouting, then rifle fire. Bullets snap through the trees. Something tugs at his sleeve. He doesn't stop, doesn't look back, just runs with the desperate energy of a man who knows he's seconds away from being cut down. The American foxholes are ahead. He can see the silhouettes of helmets against the lightning sky. He's screaming now, yelling the company password, hoping someone recognizes his voice before they shoot him as a German infiltrator. Someone does. Sergeant Morrison, a veteran who's been with Baker Company since Normandy, recognizes Reeves' voice and holds fire. Reeves tumbles into the foxhole line, gasping for breath, his uniform torn and muddy. Behind him, the German patrol has stopped pursuing, unwilling to get too close to the American positions in the growing daylight. Morrison stares at Reeves like he's seeing a ghost. "Where the hell have you been?" Reeves can't answer yet. He's too busy trying to breathe, his heart hammering in his chest. But he doesn't need to answer, because as the sun rises over the Hurtgen forest, something becomes very clear. There's no sniper fire. The German riflemen who've been terrorizing Baker Company for 16 hours are silent. All 3 positions are destroyed. The killing ground has gone quiet. Captain Lawson arrives at Reeves' foxhole 20 minutes later, his face a mixture of confusion and anger. He demands an explanation. Reeves, still catching his breath, tells him everything. The modified mines, the nighttime crawl, the 3 throws. Lawson's face goes pale, then red, then pale again. He's clearly torn between fury at the unauthorized action and disbelief that it actually worked. "You did what?" Lawson's voice is dangerously quiet. "You crawled into enemy territory, alone, with improvised explosives, and engaged 3 fortified positions without orders?" Reeves nods. He's too exhausted to be afraid of the consequences now. "Yes, sir. They were killing us. Someone had to do something." Lawson stares at him for a long moment. Then he turns and walks away without another word. Reeves watches him go, wondering if he's about to be arrested. But the arrest never comes. Instead, over the next few hours, something else happens. Word of Reeves' action spreads through Baker Company, then through the battalion, then through the regiment. The men who'd been pinned down, who'd watched their friends die, who'd felt helpless and trapped, suddenly have a story to hold on to. A story about one man who refused to wait for doctrine, who used his brain and his coal miner's hands to solve a problem the officers couldn't fix. By midday, Reeves is something of a legend. Soldiers from other companies are coming by to shake his hand, to ask about the barrel roll mine trick, to hear the story firsthand. Reeves is uncomfortable with the attention. He's not a hero. He's just a guy who got tired of watching people die. But the story has taken on a life of its own. 3 days later, Reeves is summoned to battalion headquarters. He expects a reprimand, maybe a court-martial for unauthorized use of captured enemy ordnance. Instead, he finds himself standing in front of Colonel Hendricks, the battalion commander, and a captain from the Corps of Engineers he's never met before. The engineer captain introduces himself as Captain Edward Marsh, and he's very interested in what Reeves did in the Hurtgen Forest. Walk me through the modification process. Marsh says, pulling out a notepad. How did you bypass the pressure fuse? What kind of blasting cap did you use? How did you calculate the throw distance? Reeves answers as best he can, explaining the wiring, the fuse timing, the throwing technique he'd learned in the coal mines. Marsh takes notes rapidly, occasionally interrupting with technical questions. Colonel Hendricks watches silently. When Reeves finishes, Marsh looks up from his notepad. Private Reeves, what you did was extraordinarily dangerous, completely unauthorized, and violated about a dozen safety regulations. Reeves' heart sinks. Here it comes. The court-martial. It was also, Marsh continues, one of the most innovative field adaptations I've seen in this war. You took a static defensive weapon and converted it into an offensive tool using materials at hand and knowledge from civilian experience. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Marsh glances at Colonel Hendricks, who nods slowly. We're not going to court-martial you, Reeves. We're going to document your technique and test it under controlled conditions. If it works as reliably as you claim, we may incorporate it into combat engineer training. Reeves is stunned. He'd expected punishment, not praise. But Marsh isn't done. However, the captain says, his tone sharpening, you will never, ever attempt something like this again without explicit authorization. Do you understand? What you did worked. But you could have easily killed yourself and compromised your unit's position. Luck played a role in your success, and we don't train soldiers to rely on luck. Reeves nods quickly. Yes, sir. Understood, sir. Marsh relaxes slightly. Good. Now, we're going to need you to demonstrate the modification process for our training staff, and I'll need a written report detailing every step you took that night. Can you do that? Reeves nods again. Yes, sir. Colonel Hendricks finally speaks. Dismissed, Private, and for what it's worth, you saved a lot of lives. Don't let the bureaucracy make you forget that. Over the next 2 weeks, Reeves works with Captain Marsh and a team of combat engineers to refine the barrel roll mine technique. They test different fuse lengths, throwing distances, and mine types. They discover that Reeves' instincts were remarkably accurate. The 5-second fuse provides just enough time for a trained thrower to deliver the mine and take cover. The barrel roll spin stabilizes the mine in flight, improving accuracy. An explosive force of modified Schutzamine is devastating against fortified positions at close range. The technique isn't perfect. It requires extensive training. It's dangerous for the thrower, and it only works in specific tactical situations. But in those situations, it's devastatingly effective. By January 1945, a modified version of Reeves' technique is being taught at combat engineer schools in France. It's given an official designation, Expedient Hand-Delivered Mine Assault. Soldiers, predictably, ignore the official name and call it the barrel roll trick. The technique proves its worth in the final months of the war. Combat engineers use it to clear fortified positions in urban fighting. Scouts use it to eliminate machine gun nests. In one documented case, a team of engineers in the Ruhr Pocket uses modified mines to destroy a German strongpoint that had resisted 3 days of artillery bombardment. The official after-action report credits the barrel roll technique with saving an estimated 47 Allied lives by eliminating entrenched positions without costly frontal assaults. Captain Marsh compiles these reports and forwards them to the Army's Tactical Doctrine Board. He argues that Reeves' innovation represents a fundamental shift in how combat engineers should think about explosives, not just as tools for demolition and obstacle clearance, but as precision weapons in close combat. The board agrees. By March 1945, the barrel roll technique is officially incorporated into the Combat Engineer Field Manual. But Danny Reeves doesn't see much of this. He's back with Baker Company, slogging to the final push into Germany. He doesn't talk much about that night in the Hurtgen Forest. When soldiers from other units ask him about it, he shrugs and says he was just doing his job. The legend grows anyway. Stories spread through the ranks. Some are accurate. Some are wildly exaggerated. Reeves hears one version where he supposedly took out 7 snipers with a single throw. He hears another where he crawled 3 miles behind enemy lines. He doesn't bother correcting anyone. Let them have their stories. He knows the truth. He knows he was terrified that entire night. Knows he got lucky that none of those throws missed. Knows that if the German patrol had been 30 seconds faster, he'd be dead or captured. Heroism, he's learned, is just fear and desperation wrapped in successful outcome. The war in Europe ends on May 8th, 1945. Danny Reeves is in a small German town when he hears the news. Around him, soldiers are celebrating, firing their weapons into the air, embracing each other. Reeves sits quietly on the steps of a bombed-out church and thinks about Henderson, about Miller, about all the men who didn't make it to see this day. He thinks about his father, back in West Virginia, who taught him how to handle explosives with respect and precision. He wonders what his old man would think about the barrel roll trick. Probably shake his head and say something about how you can take the boy out of the coal mine, but you can't take the coal miner out of the boy. Reeves allows himself a small smile at that thought. He's discharged in August 1945 and returns to West Virginia. The Army offers him a commendation for his actions in the Hurtgen Forest, but he declines. He doesn't want a medal for something that was born out of desperation and anger. He just wants to go home. He returns to the coal mines, working alongside his father until the old man retires. Eventually, Reeves becomes a shot firer himself, training younger miners in the art of handling explosives safely. He never talks about the war unless someone asks directly. And even then he keeps it brief. What's there to say? He did what he thought was necessary. It worked. People lived who might have died. That's enough. But the barrel roll technique doesn't disappear with Reeves' return to civilian life. It continues to evolve in the post-war army. Combat engineers refine the throwing methods, develop safer fusing systems, and create training programs specifically for hand-delivered explosive assault. By the Korean War, the technique is standard doctrine for combat engineer units facing fortified positions. During the Vietnam War, Special Forces teams adapt the method for use with shaped charges and claymore mines. The core principle remains the same. A skilled operator with a modified explosive can eliminate targets that conventional weapons can't reach. And it all traces back to a coal miner from West Virginia who refused to watch his friends die because of outdated doctrine. In 1983, a military historian researching combat innovations of World War II contacts Danny Reeves. He's working on a book about field adaptations and wants to interview Reeves about the Hurtgen Forest incident. Reeves, now in his 60s, agrees to the interview but downplays his role. "I just used what I knew," he tells the historian. "My daddy taught me how to throw dynamite, and the Army taught me how to modify fuses. Put those two things together, and you get the barrel roll trick." Wasn't genius. Was just common sense. The historian presses him on the danger, on the courage it took to crawl into enemy territory alone. Reeves shrugs. Wasn't brave. Was angry. Brave is when you're scared and do it anyway because it's the right thing. I was just mad that they kept killing my friends, and I wanted it to stop. That's not heroism. That's stubbornness. The historian includes Reeves' story in his book, which is published in 1985. It's a minor footnote in a chapter about improvised weapons and field innovations. Most readers skip over it. But a few combat engineers read that chapter and recognize the name. They know the barrel roll technique. They've trained on it, used it, taught it to others. They know that somewhere in the lineage of every modified mine they've ever thrown, There's a West Virginia coal miner who figured out how to turn a defensive weapon into an offensive tool because he refused to accept that men had to die waiting for artillery support. That's the real legacy. Not medals or commendations. Just the quiet knowledge that when doctrine fails, sometimes all you need is someone willing to think differently and trust their hands. Danny Reeves passes away in 1998 at the age of 77. His obituary in the local paper mentions his service in World War II and his long career in the coal mines. It doesn't mention the Hurtgen Forest, doesn't mention the 3 snipers, doesn't mention the barrel roll trick. His family buries him in a small cemetery overlooking the mountains where he'd spent his youth learning to handle explosives in the darkness. At the funeral, an older man in an army dress uniform appears. He introduces himself to Reeves' family as a retired combat engineer. He tells them that their father saved his life in 1952 in Korea when the technique Reeves pioneered was used to clear a bunker that had his unit pinned down. He'd never met Reeves. Never even knew his name until he read the obituary. But he wanted the family to know that Danny Reeves' innovation had echoed through decades, saving lives long after the war that Bertha had ended. The family thanks him. They didn't know. Reeves had never told them. That's the story of the barrel roll mine trick. A story about ordinary men doing extraordinary things not because they're heroes, but because they refuse to accept that death is inevitable. A story about how innovation often comes in the least expected places. Coal mines and foxholes. Desperation and anger, stubbornness and skill. The official military histories will tell you about generals and grand strategies, about divisions and campaigns. But the real story of war is written in moments like that December night in 1944, when a private first class from West Virginia decided that doctrine wasn't worth 7 dead men and crawled into darkness with a pack full of modified mines and a coal miner's steady hands. They tried to ban his technique afterward, called it too dangerous, too unauthorized. But you can't ban an idea whose time has come. You can't court-martial innovation. And you can't stop soldiers from learning that sometimes the best weapon isn't the one the manual tells you to use. It's the one you figure out how to build yourself when everything else has failed.